Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I haven't done any Azure policy videos for a long time, so I thought I'm going to bring a policy video today. So what I wanted to show today, in your environment, when you come and start using Azure still have a lot of classic resources. And really, you should not be using the classic resources anymore in Azure because everything has moved to the ARM-based template. For example, say I'm looking for an IP address. Okay, so you can look at, you have the public IP address, but you have these resources, the weird resources with a different, little bit of different old symbol that says reserved IP address and with a parenthesis classic. Now these are still there for customers who probably started using Azure for a in a very long time ago, and they need some compatibility or still need to use that environment for whatever reason. I'm a new customer. I have nothing in this particular subscription. So if I want to create a new resource, and by mistake if I choose this resource, you know, either knowingly or unknowingly, can I create? What do you guys think? So let's just test that one. So I'm going to create a, just say, classic resource RG for resource group. Let's create that one and let's test classic reserved IP. Okay, and right now I can deploy anywhere I like, just to stick to US2, that's fine. And we are going through a validation phase right now, and once this validation is successful, if I hit create, let's see what happens. It's now submitted the deployment is going on, and if everything goes right, I might see a classic resource in my Azure environment. Now, this is something probably you would need to block because you do not want these classes resources to be deployed in your environment unless there is a very, very specific reason. Okay, so this deployment is going on right now. Okay, you can click on this icon over here, and now it says the deployment is successful. So I can either go to the resource or go to the resource group to see what happened. So let's just go to the resource group. Okay, if I go to the resource group, that is the container. Now you see I have got the reserved IP that's got created within my resource group. Unbelievable. Okay, so if I go there, I can start using, and look at that, there's a public IP in there. Okay, I can look at the JSON view for this particular deployment, and what I see that the type is Microsoft Classic Network. Okay, so that is the key. Classic Network. Okay, that is the resource type that you should not allow in your environment. Now, how do you block it? Well, there are many different ways to block it. One of the powerful ways to block it of this behavior is to Azure policies. So let's go to Azure policy. Now, unfortunately, if you go and look for the definitions, there is no policy that is built in that is going to help you to stop this behavior. For example, over here, if I search for classic resource, there is no policy that's going to help you. This is where you need to create a custom policy to secure your environment. Okay, so let's see. Let's create an environment. A lot of time what I do, I just look for an existing policy that may be close to what I want. Since the classic, let's look for some basic deny policy. Let's see if I can find something. There's nothing like that. So let's just look at some policies that we have here. Okay. Mm, 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 Then maybe storage. Let's look at some storage. Usually the storage account policies I can reuse time to time. All right. So storage account should disable public network access. Okay. Let's look at the policy, what it's doing. Okay. All right. So this is the policy for the storage. Okay. And I'm just going to review this. It looks like this policy. The default value is audit, but policy can also be applied in an audit mode, deny mode, or disable mode. A deny mode is what I would like. And what is the rule? The rule says, hey, if you have a storage account, okay, and if the storage account public network access field is not equals disable, then you deny. So this is a really good policy if I want to stop the classic deployment of my network. Okay, I just need some modification of this policy. So what I like to do here, I'm going to click on duplicate definition. Okay, I'm going to store this definition into my subscription, and I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to call it deny classic Azure resource deployment. Now what I'm going to do, I'm not going to make any changes here. First, I just need to create this policy, and I'm going to, instead of using it under the storage category, maybe I am going to go, if I don't find anything that I like, I just create a new category. Okay, I'm going to say custom policy. I don't know if it takes a space. Let me see existing one. What kind of, yeah, looks like they can take space. So I'm just gonna say custom policy. Now I save this one. Now you see that once I saved, this deny classic resource deployment is now created, but it's got the storage account. This is not what we want. So we need to make some modification to the policy. So how do you make the modification? Second, what you really need, you need to go back. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to test the policy only with this classic IP resource that we have deployed. And what we really need is go back to the JSON view. And I'm looking for this particular property. So this is what I want to block. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, Microsoft Classic Network reserved IPs is something I would like to block. So I'm going to come back here. So this is the custom policy that I'm creating. Okay, I'm going to do edit definition. Okay, now it becomes very easy. Over here, I don't need two different fields. Okay, I want to get rid of one of the fields in there. And here I'm going to go after field type is fine, but the type is not storage account is not what I want. I want this Microsoft Classic Network reserved IPs. That is what I want to block. Okay, and then you can really keep the rest of it. Okay, the thing that you want to change is the description. The description is for the storage account. You want to update that as well. There we go. So now you have a policy that is gonna block any classic network reverse IP to be deployed in your environment. Okay, so let's do that and validate, and then I'll tell you how you can use this policy to broaden your scope, so it will go after not only your reserved IPs, it can block any classic resource deployment. Okay, at this time let's save this one. So now this policy has been saved, right? So if you go back to the policy blade, okay, and then refresh, okay, and go to policy and maybe look for, it's not giving me custom, maybe type, where is my custom? Okay, let me try. Oh, I have the storage in here. Maybe, yeah, there we go. This, if I now uh, order by the type, this is the policy that I created. So now you have the policy created. Now you can apply this policy, you assign this policy, right? Now you assign this policy to, say, where? You're gonna assign this policy to maybe on that resource group only. So this is the resource group. You select it and then you review and create the policy, and then you say create, and there we go. Your policy is getting created as we speak, and it will say that policy might take about 30 minutes to take in effect, and sometimes it does, but some other times the policy assignment is momentary, and since I'm dealing with only one subscription, most likely this will not take a huge amount of time for this work. So what I can do now, I can go back. I can go back to the resource group, or just go back to the reserved IP address one more time and try to create another classic IP address in that resource group where we said, hey, don't apply. Oh, one thing we didn't do though. Okay, now I remember. Let me go back to the policy and then assignments. So this policy, by default, this policy was created with an audit mode. So if you go and click on the parameter and you do this and uncheck this, you see the default effect for this policy is audit. So this is not gonna be helpful. We want to change the audit mode to deny mode. Now the policy will take in effect. Okay, let's save and save. So now this policy have been saved and the mode is now deny, right? So now let's go back. Okay, let's go back to the reserved IP address. Let's try to create another one and select the same resource group, and let's name that test classic IP and then v2. Okay, keep the same US region. Let's go to the next one. Aha, what happened? Now if you click on this error, it is going to tell you that your resource test classic IPv2 was disallowed by policy. Voila, that's what we wanted. We wanted our environment secure, and we wanted to deny this classic IP address deployment. Okay, so we have successfully accomplished what we wanted. So once you have that, so this is how I develop policies. Okay, so I know this policy is working and I have verified that with one resource. Now I have to expand the scope of this policy. Okay, so to expand the scope of the policy, what I really want to do, I want to figure out. So if I go back now to, say, to our resource again, look at the JSON view, I already know that the type classic network reserve IP. So probably the most of the classic resources, they will have something in common. They will probably have the Microsoft.Classic as part of the resource naming convention. Okay, so I can go after that and modify the policy in a way so it's going to block all kinds of resource deployment that are of classic type. For example, if you go in here, if I search virtual machine, virtual network, okay, they all have this classic thing. I'm pretty sure storage, they probably still do have a classic storage, you see, disk classic. So what happened with the policy that we have implemented, it is not going to block, say, a classic storage account. For example, let's try to create one. So if we create one classic storage, I don't have any policy to block that. So let's try. So let's say test classic storage. Okay, and the storage account naming convention is very strict. So let's try this one. So 1, 2, 3, maybe. This one looks like it's still not true. 3, 4, 5, 2, 1. Let's say if that one is good. Okay, so this one looks like globally unique. Nobody's complaining. And I'm gonna go with very basic options in here. Okay, and I'm not gonna worry about too much about anything. My goal is to just show you that although we have restricted the public IP address of Classic resource, we have not blocked a Classic storage account because now it's going through the final validation. Once this is done, what we'll do, we'll go back and update the policy to be more generic. Okay, then we'll test and make sure that we have a policy that you can use anywhere you want. Okay, so now this deployment is going on, and in few minutes this deployment hopefully will be successful because we do not have any policy to block it. Hopefully you're following me. Okay, so again, so this is deployment phase. Can again click on this button right here that is going to tell you the details of the deployment. You can easily click on this as well. That will bring you to this page where you can get a little bit of more detail, like when it started, all that, and look at that, it's now done. Okay, so if I go to the resource, this storage account is really the classic storage account. That is not good. Okay, if I look at the JSON view, okay, well, this one does not actually have a classic one, so maybe the storage account Azure may have started, okay, to convert that into a better storage account automatically, so you may not need anything. So, but for other resources like say for disk, okay, you may be having the old storage account even now. Let's try a disk as well as we speak and see if disk Azure is automatically helping you to fix that problem or not. So test classic disk and level, let's try the same level. And interesting, is not even letting me choose any resource group, and it's asking me for a storage blob. So we do have a storage account. Let's see if we can choose anything. Oh, so looks like the classic storage account is probably not enabled by Azure anymore, because we tried to deploy the classic storage, it just come up with a new account, which is good. So this looks like the disk classic requires you to have a classic storage account. So for example, if you had an environment where you actually had a classic storage, you would be able to do this one, right? So let's 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 see what other classic storage accounts are there and how we can update our policy so we don't have to do the experimentation over and over again. We just know that here's my policy. Anytime if you see any resource that has the classic in it, block it. Okay, let's see how to do that. All right, to do that, we probably need to go back to our policy. Okay, so go back to our definition, and what we'll do, let's remove the assignment that we have. Okay, just delete this assignment so you know how to delete an assignment. Go back to the definition, go back to the definition that we started working on, edit the definition, and simply thing that you need is this. And it sometimes takes a minute for the actual policy to show up. Go back in there, say edit definition. Come on. Reload, reload, and load, please. I don't know what's the deal. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. for the edit button to show up. So let's go to definition one more time. Deny classic resources. I see the policy. Edit definition here at the bottom. See this, sometimes I don't know if you see the problem. If you did, please leave a comment. But this is what you have, and all you need to do really, you have the field type, and we were going after the equals. We're going to change that to contains. Okay, and what we will do, we'll remove this whole thing. So it could be a classic disk, it could be a classic storage, it could be a classic whatever. Anytime you have a Microsoft.Classic in your field name, this policy will now deny its deployment. Okay, so this is going to be a very much superior policy that you can confidently use to block any Microsoft Classic resource deployment within your environment. So let's just save this one, and with this one we're going to assign that again to our subscription. Let's just assign to the resource group again. Let's see, what is it? So scope is the resource group. Okay, I don't want to do any exclusion, and review and create up. Actually, parameters again, don't forget that the default is audit. Let's just deny everything and then hit create, and now the policy is in place. All right, before we go and retest the policy, I wanted to teach you another trick, and another, not trick, another command that you can use. The type of resources the policy is now really going to block. So there is one thing called the Azure provider, right? The Azure provider provides all the different type of providers that you have. So if you list the Azure provider and say dash o then table, this command will give you all the types of Azure providers that are available to you. See, we have all this. Now what I'm really looking for in this is the classic resources, like, and they are the classic resources. So you can still have your classic compute. Some of them are not registered, but you can register it. You have the classic subscription. So all of those, you have it. Now one easy way to get to and see what are the resources that will be affected by the policy, you can just grep, okay, dash I, and then provide classic. So this is going to give you the list of resources that it is going to block. Okay, so there we go. So you have the classic network. Classic compute is not registered, not registered, not sure. That means you can register, but classic infrastructure migrate. So today, if you really want, you can create any of these resources. Okay, now please note that within classic network we deploy the IP address. There are other resources, say the VNet, okay, that can be deployed now most likely, right? Well, now with this policy we're going to block that deployment as well. So let's see, let's go back. So this policy is in place. If I go to my assignment, I should see this policy is in there. And if I click on it and look at my compliance, we are going to find one IP address that we created before this policy was implemented. So it's saying there's one IP that is non-compliant, right? But let's go and try to create maybe a VNet. Let's see if we can create a classic VNet. Can we? Classic, do you see any classic? Okay, VM. There is VM image classic, virtual. Let's see, virtual networks classic. Let's see if we can create that one in our environment. Okay, so let's do a create. Let's go to the resource group where we do have the policy. So let's test VNet. Classic, and I'm just gonna go with default stuff, and it says validation pass. Now sometimes your policy evaluation happens at this validation stage, some other times it actually happens at the deployment stage. So let's actually try to create and see what happens. Okay, so now you are submitting, and now you look at that. So it says the deployment failed. And if you look at it, it said it was disallowed by my policy. So now my policy is overarching. Okay, so now if you try to deploy any of these classic resources in your Azure environment, I have given you a policy that you can use to stop the deployment completely. Okay, hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any comments, please leave it here, and hope to see you in the next video where we're going to learn more about Azure governance and how you can make your environment more secure and have confidence that you have done it correctly. Thank you.